Life would be better if we all started Greg Heffley maxing. You remember that dude from A Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Bro would just write about his daily life, and in today's world, that matters more than you could think. You see, recently, I've had a realization that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since. And what I've noticed is that my generation is struggling to just sit in silence without reaching for some kind of distraction. It's like being alone with our own thoughts feels so uncomfortable that there's this instinct within us that we are trying to fill any sort of empty space with something or some sort of distraction. Even when we try to slow down and actually relax, we will just like reach for our phones and without even thinking about it, we'll be on Instagram Reels just swiping away. Let me know if this sounds familiar. Imagine you get home from work and you sit down after a long day and you tell yourself you're just gonna rest for a bit. And 5 minutes later, you're already scrolling without even realizing you picked up your phone. And it doesn't feel like our own decision anymore. The way we have started to think has slowly changed over time and not in a good way. But that realization kind of stuck with me. So I ended up going down a path that I did not expect. And what I found was something as simple as being like Greg Heffley and journaling down our thoughts, especially in today's society. It feels like a cheat code. And the fact that journaling even feels like a cheat code today kind of reveals how our thoughts and our attention span has changed over time. The world used to be slower without constant distractions and stimulants, but now it moves as fast as it's ever been with distractions like phones and social media and man-made algorithms. Now you can't even go on your phone for 3 minutes without seeing an ad that is catered specifically to you. Like let's say I was talking to my buddy and I was talking about that I want to drink healthier soda and I open up Instagram the next day, the first thing I will see on my feed is like a special deal for fucking Olipop. And since everything on our feed is specifically designed for us to stay on the app for as long as possible, we don't even realize that we've been on our phone until we actually just stop. And that's just when it starts to get interesting. Distractions are constant, but the real damage is when we put our phones down. The problem now is we don't even remember what we consume. It's just a constant hit of dopamine. Our brains are saying, oh, we want more, because it is so fried from the constant stimulation. Like, I like to think of it as, imagine if you had to work a corporate job every single day, but you weren't able to sleep. That is probably how our brains are feeling. And what's crazy is that the same mechanism that makes playing slot machines fun at casinos is being used in our Instagram feeds. Psychologists call this phenomenon variable reward schedules, where in the case of the slot machine in the casino, every couple of spins, you're rewarded with a win, and it hooks us just enough to keep going for that next hit and that next spin. But in our case with social media and algorithms, every time we scroll, we will eventually be rewarded with a win, which is like a video that we find enjoyable to watch, so we watch it a couple times. And just like a casino, it hooks us just enough to keep going for that next hit or that next scroll. We are legit turning into dopamine zombies. Like, how crazy would it be if someone spent 5 hours a day sitting at the casino? We would say that they probably need some serious help, but that's exactly what we're doing with our phones. It's unreal. And since our dopamine is being occupied from scrolling, it's almost impossible for us to actually do hard tasks because mentally we are exhausted from those constant dopamine spikes. So when your brain's in that state, there's no room for things that actually matter. Like, when was the last time you took 10 minutes just to be present with yourself without distractions? When was the last time you were bored on purpose? Most people can't even remember that. When was the last time you faced your feelings and faced your inner thoughts? Like, for me, it was years. Every time I would shower, I had to be listening to music, or every meal that I ate was accompanied with a YouTube video because I couldn't sit in silence with my own thoughts. So there had to be this constant stimulation. And I know I'm not the only one. My brain would feel so cloudy with, hundreds of thoughts flowing at once. So it felt impossible to focus on my daily tasks. And I think subconsciously, I was looking for an escape away from my inner feelings. So filling empty space with scrolling or distractions, it just felt comfortable for me. I didn't face my feelings because I was never present with myself. It felt like I couldn't get my thoughts or my feelings together. And that's when it stopped being about screens for me, because I realized I wasn't scrolling because I was just bored. I was scrolling because I wanted to feel something. And that's when I had 3 realizations that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since. These changed the way I face these problems, and the first realization is the reason you're watching this video. I'm not sure if anybody feels like this, but I used to be completely dependent on stimulation without even realizing it. Every empty second I had, I was grabbing my phone and unconsciously opening up apps like Instagram or YouTube. And it's actually crazy because I would sometimes catch myself doing this and I would think like, holy shit, man, I'm cooked. I'm opening these apps without even using my brain to think. And on the flip side, there were times when I was bored on purpose, it would feel so uncomfortable. I think it's why a lot of people actually have trouble going to sleep because, it's the first time in their day where their brains aren't receiving any sort of input. So they're forced to just lay on their bed and they're forced to face their feelings for the day. And their mind is just racing constantly instead of falling asleep. But even bedtime isn't safe from stimulation anymore, as I know people who have to listen to white noise or some sort of podcast to help them fall asleep. So realization number 1 is silence feels uncomfortable now. And if silence is where your brain is supposed to decompress, but it feels unbearable, then we have a real problem on our hands because our brain never gets to do the one thing it actually needs. Which brings me to my second realization. It is super easy to blame screens and social media for all of our problems now. And although I think that's valid to a point, it gets to a point where life gets so overwhelming that you have to realize my second realization, which is we don't slow down and let our brains process what's going on anymore. Our attention and brain are always occupied somewhere. And even when we are relaxing, are we really relaxing? I like to think of it like when you get home from work and you want to relax, what does that look like to you? What are you doing? For me, it was like laying on the couch on my phone. And then I had this epiphany where that's not even relaxing. That's just distracting myself from reality. And the final realization I had is on some Sigmund Freud shit, but not on that weird mother complex thing that you're thinking about. Unprocessed thoughts and feelings stay active in our mind, and we can ignore the thoughts all we want, but they never truly disappear from our subconscious until we face them and acknowledge them that they're there. Otherwise, they just sit in the background of your mind, constantly looping. It's like when you're on a computer and you're trying to update it or it's lagging like so bad and the screen is just loading for minutes, but nothing is happening. It just sits in the background. And I think that's the reason why when we have a conversation with someone and days or hours later, when we're alone and we think to ourselves, damn, I should have said this or I should have done this. It's because our brain before that moment had this unfinished loop that needed closure because we as humans crave closure. Our thoughts don't go away, they loop. And having these realizations was honestly kind of scary because at first, I didn't know what I should do with them. There needed to be a way to combat this growing feeling of unrest. So I did what any logical person in their 20s would do, and I went to Reddit to see if anybody else was feeling like this. And I wanted to try to understand how to work through it because I was looking for a way to clear my mind and a way to focus on how I was feeling. But before I get into what I did, if you're enjoying this video, please hit that subscribe button because only 3% of you watching are actually subscribed. So if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe. Now back to the video. And this is when I came across something that I haven't done since elementary school, when in 3rd or 4th grade, the teachers assigned us to write about our days and what we did after school. So I took the same exact concept and I brought it to my 23-year-old self. I would finally try journaling. At first, I was really hesitant because in the back of my mind, expressing your feelings and journaling was like a very feminine thing to do. And I didn't know any man that would ever write down their feelings or how they were truly feeling. But looking back at it, I don't even know why journaling has this like feminine connotation. Everyone has feelings. It was difficult to begin because everything I would write down would feel fake. And it felt like a chore, but I stayed consistent. And that's when I started to see a shift. And after a while, I started noticing changes that I did not expect. And for the first time in my adult life, my brain finally felt quieter. And what I wish I knew when I first started journaling was that there is no right way to do it. Like if you wanted to write about your day, Go right ahead. That's just as valuable as writing about how like one of your shitty coworkers makes you feel. What I like to do is I typically write a page every day just about what I did throughout the day so I can have a nice log of it. And I also write about things that are making me stressed or anxious about the future. And as corny as it sounds, writing down like some personal self-help affirmations is so helpful. Like if you wrote down, today will be a good day, I can do anything. If you write that down a couple of times, as corny as it sounds, I know I kind of sound like a bitch right now, but it's kind of true. That shit has some power to it. If you write, I will win the day, subconsciously you're telling your brain you will win the day. So no matter what you do, the background of your mind is telling you you're going to win the fucking day. But there's some real power behind our thoughts and how we talk to ourselves in the subconscious. And at first, it felt like I was writing down random shit, but then I started noticing these awesome changes. And the first of many changes that I noticed when I started journaling was that it forced me to be present. I had to keep myself accountable and focus on what I did that day and how I was feeling. So if I spent the day, just laying in bed being a chud, then I would have nothing to write about, and that would reflect in my journal. And it was like once those thoughts hit the paper, they kind of stopped bouncing around in my mind so much. And what I realized is that journaling makes you slow down and focus on the present, and it makes you focus on how are you feeling at this certain point in time. And we live in this really, really like lightning fast-paced world, and taking some time for yourself and enjoying the present goes a long way now because we just don't do it as humans or as Gen Z. And journaling, what I found, is a great instrument to allow ourselves, a mental and a physical break from what's going on outside of our lives. And once my mind started to slow down, I noticed something else was starting to change. Now, I've never been to therapy, and I probably should because, I've heard great benefits of going. But in some ways, from my outside perspective, I feel like journaling in some ways is like therapy. You write down how you're feeling, and in turn, you're forced to think about yourself when normally you wouldn't. You would be distracted looking at sheep on Instagram or something like that. And it also acts as a mental exercise where you're training yourself to just like be alone in your own skin and be comfortable with that, with your thoughts. I think of it like this way too. Like, just like anything, like when you're at the gym, the more you do something, the easier it eventually will get. And I think the same thing can applies with like journaling and being alone. The more time you're alone, the more comfortable you will be being alone. And something embarrassing that I've realized too since I've started journaling was that I felt more self-aware, which in itself is not embarrassing. But I remember like before, if I was feeling upset for no reason, I would just blame it on, the casual, oh, I'm just tired. I didn't sleep well last night. That's because I was upset. Like that was my default, dialogue line, my default answer. But now after journaling for about a year, I think it's easier to pinpoint what is making me feel the way I'm feeling. So like, for example, I'm a huge Minnesota sports fan, and recently the Timberwolves lost, and I was pretty upset by it because I wanted the Wolves to win. But now, since I was journaling, I knew exactly why I was feeling this way, because when I would write about it in my journal, it's like a part of that feeling went away. I can now consciously and subconsciously acknowledge how silly it was that like this sport should not be affecting my mood, but it was. And even beyond the mental aspects and mental benefits of journaling, there are some other cool features to journaling that you wouldn't normally expect. Like when I was in elementary school, I think every couple of years we would do like time capsules. So we would put stuff in from that era and like bury it underneath the school or something. And that is kind of like what the journal is like to me now. It's like if you're writing these mini time capsules with like certain specific thoughts and memories from a very specific point in time. And I think that is so cool to look back on, especially like years in the future. It gives you dopamine, but not that cheap shit that you get from scrolling. Like this is that good, high quality, this is that good shit. I tried journaling in 2020 because that's when COVID started and I was a senior in high school. So I wanted to read a specific journal entry from my time in 2020. I said, the only stories I hear on the news are about coronavirus and how it's spreading like crazy. I don't even know what they're going to do with graduation if everything's closed. End quote. Journaling makes it feel like a legit time capsule. But what surprised me the most is how journaling started to affect my physical health, not just my mental. It turns out if you empty your thoughts and clear your mind, you can see these results take form in physical form. Journaling is known to reduce stress and anxiety. And I've read studies that show that, writing down your thoughts frees your mind of severe clutter, which leads then to cortisol being produced less. And what I've found too is since I started journaling before bed, it gives me absolute closure for the night, and my quality of sleep has actually skyrocketed. I've seen the moments of, me laying awake at night overthinking almost every night to almost none now, because I have closure on the day. I wrote down my parting thoughts, and it reduces the stress that I have. This is a very important thing because stress is one of the leading causes of disease in the world. And it really feels like journaling is like a cheat code. But as helpful as journaling is, it does not solve all of our problems. You can write down as much as you want, and there are major benefits to doing that, but expecting every single problem to go away would just be a little bit silly. And the way I think about it is that you can journal every single night that you are unhappy, but if you don't take action and nothing changes in your life, eventually you writing down that you're unhappy, it's just documenting the same problems over and over again. What I want people to understand, if you're at this part of the video, is that journaling isn't this like magical method to fix all of our problems, but I think the main benefit is that it doesn't solve our problems, but it makes us aware enough to finally face our problems. And to be honest, I feel like most people never get to that step because they are constantly distracting themselves from how they truly and really feel deep down. Modern life keeps us distracted, overstimulated, and disconnected from our thoughts. And journaling provides us an avenue to slow down and actually understand how we are feeling and who we truly are again. But before you click off and you have made it this far in the video, I need to say thank you so much. We just hit 500 subscribers, and this would not be possible without your support. And now the road to 600 subscribers starts now. And I would also like to give a shout out to Polly Walnuts and JP Finance on YouTube for inspiring these kind of vids. Peace.